And now I introduce to you Don Frost, a Protestant, a reformer, and an evangelist who has a timely message that needs to be heard. Thanks for joining, Don.
Thank you, Daniel. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
Don, you went to Washington, D.C. to protest the Pope. Why did you go?
When I heard that the Pope was going to be coming to Washington, D.C. for sure, I spoke with many people and I said, hey, you know, America is a Protestant nation, or at least it was, founded on Protestant principles. And I was urging people, hey, you know, why aren't we doing something about it? And I was sort of directing these to leaders in the church, these comments, you know, why aren't we doing something about this? Well, why isn't the leadership doing something about this? I flew to Washington, D.C. I went to the appropriate authorities and found out that that for this particular meeting with the Pope, that there wasn't any availability at all for any kind of a demonstration. I had sort of a backup plan in case I wasn't able to get a permit. We had the idea that we wanted to make a documentary of the Pope's visit. So I had read online that you could apply for a permit to make a documentary or a movie up on Capitol Hill. So I applied for that, figuring, well, media, news crews, people that want to make documentaries would be allowed up there to do this, and was informed that, yes, normally you could do this, but for the papal visit, no documentaries were going to be permitted to be made on Capitol Hill. So I said, well, then obviously the news media is going to be covering this. How could I get a press pass? Is there any way to get a press pass for this event? And they said, well, we don't issue the press passes. And I said, well, who is issuing the press passes for this event? And they said, quite frankly, we don't know. And I said, well, is there anybody that can tell me? And they said, well, why don't you contact one of the news organizations in town? So I went to CBS News, and I asked them if they, you know, how do you get a press pass for this event? And they told me at CBS News, they said, you're not going to be able to get a press pass for this event. And I said, why? And they said, well, Congress turned over to the Catholic Church the authority to issue the press passes at this event, and unless the Catholic Church has sent you an invitation, you're out of luck. And that really blew me away when they told me that. And I said, well, that's a news story in and of itself, that Congress turned over the authority to issue press passes to the Roman Catholic Church. But I want to back up a little bit. While I was still up on Capitol Hill applying for the permit, once it was discovered that I had flown all the way in from the West Coast to apply for this permit, and literally everything that I had tried to do, I was kind of shot down. One of the other individuals that was in the background was listening to the conversation and did her due diligence just to make sure that every location up on Capitol Hill where they normally allow people to come and demonstrate was off limits. And it turned out that there was one spot that was available, that the Congress and the papal delegation that was planning this event hadn't made off limits. And I said, I would like to apply for this spot. And so they said, well, you can apply for it, but we can't guarantee that you're going to get it. And once they discover that one of these areas kind of slipped through the cracks or somebody overlooked, they're probably not going to issue it to you. And they brought over a map to me of the Capitol Hill grounds, and they showed me on the map, they said, it's this area right here, area number 7.
Tell me about where you're located and what you start to see.
Well, they gave us this area number 7, and it's a beautiful garden area on the north side of the Capitol building. And the Capitol Hill complex itself is the United States Capitol building on one side, and it's flanked on either side by offices for the congressmen and for the senators. And they placed us in the area that was right next to the door, literally just feet away from the door, where everybody has to go through when you're coming into the Senate building. I guess since 9/11, security has been really tightened there, and instead of being able to really come through the front door, everybody has to go through this door on the side of the building, which is right where we were, and go through the metal detectors. And so as we sat up there, the foreign dignitaries, Vatican officials, senators, the limousines and the Escalades and the black Suburbans would pull up with the Secret Service personnel and security, and they would open the doors up and walk them into the building from where we were. And we had our banners set up right there, and I watched a number of these papal delegates that were in their priestly garments would get out of their vehicles, and they would look right over at where we had our banners set up, and it was just pretty amazing that they were able to identify that, hey, there's a group over here. But
was there any connection between the papacy and the security?
Yes, as the time got closer for the Pope to speak, in particularly the day before, delegations or security personnel from the Vatican were abuzz all over Capitol Hill, sort of directing the scenes. I remember being right in front of in this very spot where the Pope, his car was going to pull up, and me and a couple of my brethren were there, and we were getting some video shots because they weren't going to let us take video and be right there when the Pope got out of the car. You know, they had the snipers and all these paramilitary law enforcement officers out there. And so you had these papal personnel were literally just pointing to the various law enforcement and telling the media what to do and everything. Everything was completely choreographed by these priests. They were in priest outfits and stuff.
Is it safe to say the papacy was running the show? What they were deciding who was there to protest. They were deciding who was going to take up these spots, and they were actually also controlling security.
Yes, they were dictating who could cover the event, news media-wise. Whether it was determined by the Congress or Congress solicited by the papacy, but it was mandated that there was no dissension going to be allowed, and save us on Capitol Hill, the only dissenters would have to be a long distance away on the public streets and stuff, but right on Capitol Hill, we were the only ones allowed to have permission up there. They were directing the news media, the security. They were choreographing the whole event. Everything was choreographed and staged to make everything appear exactly how they wanted it.
So what you're saying is our government gave the Roman Catholic Church the power to decide what happens on our Capitol Hill.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we witnessed, yes.
So you are stationed right next to the Senate building.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing anything interesting going on over at the Senate building while you're right next to it?
We saw a great number of interesting things. But I think one of the things that really just, it was a sad thing, because as Americans, we believe in a separation of church and state. And we saw many meetings take place, and we were told, because we asked, why are all these Catholic priests, one car after another with these Catholic priests, and I say car, most of them are like motorcades and stuff like this, pulling up, and these dignitaries and officials from the Vatican going into the building one after another. It's one thing if the Pope is to come and make a speech, but it's another thing, why do you have these legions of teams of Vatican officials that are going into the Senate building and meeting with Congress and the Senate, and what is it that they're doing for days leading up to this meeting? And so we asked, we said, what's going on? And they're like, well, we're having meetings. And since our proximity, we had this sign, and on the sign we had the pure woman from Revelation chapter 12. We were under this banner, these are those that keep the commandments of Jesus. And so, but this little image that we had on there of the pure woman, it looked like Mary. And one of the things that we figured out was that Catholics and these Catholic priests were being drawn to our demonstration because we really looked like people that were there to support the papal visit. And they would get up to where we were, and they saw we had some tables out, and they would look on the tables and they would see great controversy, and they would be like, oh. And I said, well, what are you guys exactly doing in here? What are you doing in there? And they said, well, we're here with the advance team from the Vatican, and we're here to train the U.S. Senate on what specifically the Pope's climate change agenda is about and educate them as to what we're trying to achieve. And that's when I said to them, I said, I read the Pope's climate change encyclical, and I noticed that the Pope mentions the Sabbath in the encyclical. And he talks about animals having a day of rest, and I'm putting two and two together, and it looks to me like the Pope wants to have a Sabbath rest for the land, a Sabbath rest for the environment. And it seems to me like the Pope wants to have a worldwide Sunday law put in place, and through this green Sabbath, I didn't say green Sabbath, but through this Sabbath rest for the land or for the environment, that the whole world would shut their businesses and factories and everything down one day a week, and thus you'd be able to lower greenhouse emissions. And he looked at me and he goes, that's exactly what this is about. And with that, they just turned on their heels and walked away.
You're seeing the papacy and you're going into the Senate House, and what you're finding out is they are basically laying the groundwork for a Sunday law.
That's correct. But using this as, who wants everything to be polluted, right? Nobody wants pollution. Nobody wants our rivers and streams polluted or anything like that. And so what they're trying to do in the guise of being environmentalists is to say, hey, we need to help rebuild society. We need to heal the land and all this kind of stuff. And the best way we can do it is by having a green Sabbath.
Tell me a little bit about the people's reaction. You were able to pose some questions.
First question is, do you believe that climate change is man-made?
I definitely believe that man has played a significant role in it, yeah.
Now, do you believe that climate change is man-made?
I feel like it could be possible, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like we could play a role in it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe that climate change is man-made?
I believe that a great portion of it is man-made and that we have to do something about it.
And one of the concepts would be to have mandatory forced closings on Sunday so that not only could families spend time together, but that it would actually also lower greenhouse gases. Would you support something like that?
Yeah, I guess I would. Yeah.
You would?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely
I think
would.
it's coming.
Let me ask you a question. Would you support a law that mandated that all factories and businesses and shopping centers and things like that be closed one day a week to reduce greenhouse gases around the world?
I think I would have to know more of the details of it, but that certainly sounds like a good idea to me. I'm in favor of reducing climate change. So,
Would you feel comfortable that it would be that a law would be put in place making it the law of the land that this was mandatory?
Would I feel comfortable? I guess, yeah. If it's gonna help the climate change, then yeah, of course I'd be okay with it.
And how would you support it if it was compulsory? In other words, if they mandated that everybody had to do it?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So even if it went against, say, their religious conscience, they would still have to abide by it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I think the environment is more important.
I think that in terms of laws with fines, I think that some monetary penalty might be useful to enforce that.
So if the Pope pushed for a one day of the week, Sunday, to have a mandatory closure, would you be in support of that?
On a Sunday? Sure, most businesses are closed anyway on a Sunday, so that would be the natural day that you would target if you were going to go down that path.
So if a decision was made to have all the pollution factories and all this kind of stuff shut down one day a week, what day of the week would you choose?
Definitely Sunday, I think. Sunday.
Now, if the thought was put out there that one day a week would be selected to let the land rest or let the environment rest, which is in the Pope's encyclical, what day of the week do you think that would be?
I would hope for Sunday.
If you were going to pick a day when everything would have to be closed to lower greenhouse emissions, what day would it be?
Sunday?
A one day a week of rest for the environment, what day do you think would be chosen?
Well, I think the natural choice would probably be Sunday.
So, the papacy delivers the encyclical to our Senate, and so now our government is being briefed on a law that is soon to come, possibly.
And when the Pope comes, he's not trying to force his encyclical in his speech to the Senate, to the American people. All that is being made in backroom deals, just like everything else that's done up there.
And the people that you're interviewing, they are very in support of this because they see that this is something that the Pope is championing the environment, and they see this as something wonderful for the environment.
Most of those that have a say support it, and here's why. In Congress, you have two parties. We have basically a two-party system, Republicans and Democrats. And the Democrat Party is supported in a large way by labor unions. And the Republican Party, in a large way, is supported by evangelical Christians. And so here's what you have. Labor unions support a Sunday law because they want the union workers to be able to have more time off. So it's advantageous for union employees to have a Sunday law. Evangelical Christians support a Sunday law because they believe that the nation is going down the tubes because people aren't going to church. Catholics support a Sunday law because it's an idea that initiated with the Pope. And finally, environmentalists that want to see greenhouse gases and the environment healed would support a Sunday law because it would lower greenhouse gases. So you see these four groups here, which are the movers and shakers that are lobbying Congress on all these different things, and they all support a Sunday law.
Tell me now about September 23rd, 2015. The Pope comes to town. Tell me how he came, where he went, where he gave his speech. Tell me what you saw.
Well, what happens here is that the Pope comes to Washington, flies in at Andrews Air Force Base, meets with the president at the White House. They have a parade for him. He goes to Congress on the day that he goes to speak there before a joint House of Congress, delivers a speech, and then goes out onto the west front of the United States Capitol building, facing the Washington Monument, which is an obelisk, and addresses the American people. As we were there and kind of realizing what was going on, we were like, wow, we've made like an image to the papacy. Because the U.S. Capitol building architecturally looks like St. Peter's at the Vatican. And even down to the detail is that St. Peter's has an obelisk that is in front of St. Peter's. And the United States Capitol building, which is architecturally similar to St. Peter's, also has an obelisk in the front. Now, when the President of the United States, every 4 years we have an election, and on the years when we elect a new president, there is a tradition here in America that the new leader meets with the president at the White House. And then after the president meets at the White House with the incoming president, then the new incoming president, or the president-elect, then travels to Capitol Hill, where he meets with Congress at an event they usually call the prayer breakfast. And then after the meeting with Congress takes place, he then walks onto the west front of the Capitol, takes the oath of office by the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and then speaks to the American people as the president for the first time. And as we were there, we were thinking about this whole thing, and we saw later a clip from then Speaker of the House, John Boehner, saying that the Pope had requested that he was going to speak to the American people. As we saw this event that was taking place, it was all choreographed. Obviously, the Pope wasn't the new president, but the station from one place to another was exactly the way it is for the new coming president. First meet with the President of the United States, then meet with Congress, then go out onto the west front of the Capitol building, facing the obelisk, and address the American people for the first time. Only difference is this. When you're at the Vatican and they elect a new pope, the cardinals do their little behind the door, whatever it is, and then at a certain day, the special color smoke comes out of this little pipe. And then the new pope comes out of this balcony, this balcony door, and he addresses the waiting masses in front of the obelisk. This happens every time there's a new pope. After the Pope addressed Congress, we had thought that he was going to come out and address the American people at that platform area where the president takes the oath of office, but that's not what happened. There's a balcony that's on the west side of the Capitol building with a door, and the Pope came out of that door, just like at the Vatican, on the balcony there, and he addressed the people from this balcony above where the president normally speaks to the American people. And I've never seen any foreign leader or even a president that I know of address the American people from such an elevated position. And so it was just like, it was literally just like the choreography as if the Pope was at St. Peter's. Everything was in detail. Like, hey, here's the new leader, so to speak.
So the Pope lands where the president lands. He walks where the new president-elect would walk. And he goes into the building where the new president would be inaugurated, yet chooses to stand above.
That's correct, yes.
Where the presence would be.
Yes.
In essence, it looks like he's putting himself above all the presidents we've had in the past.
Yes, and the way that I'm viewing it is that we're told in prophecy, in Revelation chapter 13, and of course in the writings of Mrs. White, that this nation would clasp hands with the papacy. And what we see is that, and make an image to the papacy. And what we were witnessing, we believe, is that our government would make an image to the papacy, and that we saw that image in a major way being formed. And that now the last series of events will transpire with these backroom deals to bring this Sunday law into place, that's going to be brought into place not by religious power, but by, we want to heal the land. Nobody wants to pollute, right? Because, if you do that, you're not a good person, right?
That's right. That's right.
In the book Great Controversy, I have a quote here I want to read with you, and I believe that this applies to what we're trying to achieve here with having a series that goes to the leaders of this nation. And this quote is going to say it better than I could possibly word it. It says, and this is from Great Controversy, the book Great Controversy, page 606. It says, "But the Spirit of God came upon them as it came upon Elijah, moving him to rebuke the sins of a wicked king and an apostate people. They could not refrain from preaching the plain utterances of the Bible. Doctrines which they had been reluctant to present, they were impelled to zealously declare the truth and danger which threatened souls. The words which the Lord gave them they uttered fearless of the consequences, and the people were compelled to hear the warning. Thus the message of the third angel will be proclaimed. As the time comes for it to be given with the greatest power, the Lord will work through humble instruments, leading the minds of those who consecrate themselves to his service. The laborers will be qualified rather by the unction of his Spirit than the training of literary institutions. Men of faith and prayer will be constrained to go forth with holy zeal, declaring the words which the Lord gives them. The sins of Babylon will be laid open. The fearful results of enforcing the observances of the church by civil authority, which is exactly what's going on right now. The inroads of spiritualism, the stealthy but rapid progress of the papal power. And brothers and sisters, never in our lifetime have we seen such rapid events, rapid and progress of the papacy than we are seeing at this time right now. All will be unmasked. By these solemn warnings, the people will be stirred. Thousands upon thousands will listen who have never heard words like these. In amazement, they hear the testimony that Babylon is the church, fallen because of her errors and sins because of her rejection of the truth sent to her from heaven. As the people go to their former teachers with eager inquiry, are these things so? The ministers present fables, prophesy smooth things to soothe their fears and quiet the awakened conscience. But since many refuse to be satisfied with the mere authority of men and demand a plain "Thus saith the Lord," the popular ministry, like the Pharisees of old, filled with anger as their authority is questioned, will denounce the message as of Satan and stir up the sin-loving multitudes to revile and persecute those that proclaim it. Brothers and sisters, the time is here that these messages must go out now with force. We can't sit back now and wait for events to progress. We have to give the warning message so that these truths about the Sunday law can go out before the Sunday law goes into effect, so that when the Sunday law does go into effect, the people will know that there is a people that God has on the earth that know the end of things as they're getting ready to transpire, and will have faith and confidence in the messages that God gives us. The papacy is moving with rapid speed at this time. Events are transpiring. The Protestant churches are joining hands with the papacy as never before. And we must be about our Father's business, and we must give the warning message. And if we don't, their blood will be on our head.